Hi everybody, welcome to Susan's Kitchen. So today we're going to be making ghee. So it's not just Susan's Kitchen, it's Susan's Ayurvedic kitchen today. Sometimes it's just Susan's vegetarian kitchen, but today this is definitely making one of the most medicinal things that we can make in Ayurveda is ghee. Ghee is clarified butter, but it's so much more than that. So as I make the ghee, I'm going to describe to you what I'm doing, but also all the benefits of ghee so you can see. But ghee takes about 20 minutes to make. It actually depends on your altitude. Some people in higher altitudes, ghee can take a half hour or more to make, and at sea level where we are here, it can go a little bit faster. So what I'm using today, what we always use when we make ghee is organic unsalted butter. Although I will back up and say that the traditional way to make ghee is to use cultured yogurt, and you take the butter fat off the yogurt, but that is a very long process that we're not going to do today. But if you ever have a chance to learn how to do that, I would definitely say to do it. So I'm just going to start here to have a medium heat. If my burner holds, there we go. It's on a medium-high heat, and what we're going to do here is take 4 sticks of unsalted organic butter. It's very important to use unsalted, and of course it's always important to use organic because we don't want to have any unnecessary antibiotics, pesticides, herbicides, hormones, anything unnecessary in our ghee because we are using it as medicine ultimately. So I'm placing the 4 sticks of butter into a pot, a heavy pot here, as you can see. And what's going to happen is that the ghee is going to start to melt. The butter is going to start to melt, I should say. And this is how the magic begins when we're making ghee. Making ghee is really a very holy process because what we're doing is creating a medicinal property that's going to help carry nutrients deep into our system. So we want to really be present when we make our ghee. You never unwrap your butter and drop it off and then go do something else. You want to always stay present with your ghee as you're making it. Ghee is an ancient way of delivering nutrients deep down into, we say, the 7 tissues of the body, the 7 different layers of tissues, which is where we need to deposit our nutrients in order to remove inflammation, remove toxins from the body, and to increase the absorption of nutrients. And ghee has these magical properties that can help us do this. Actually, in India, I've seen 100-year-old ghee, which they use as medicine. It's not something I would eat on a regular basis, but you might want to mix some medicine with it. But they do have that. So it's considered a very ancient technique, and it's one of the most important things you can learn how to do in Ayurveda. There's also different ways of adding different herbs and medicines like Brahmi or ashwagandha to your ghee, but today we're going to be making some straightforward ghee with nothing extra in it, so you can use it in all of your cooking. So when we make ghee, we want to use all of our senses. We want to listen, we want to smell, eventually we're going to taste, and we want to watch. So something that's beginning to happen now as we start to make our ghee is that the milk solids are separating from the water, and the golden essence that's left at the end is our ghee. So you're starting to begin to see here that there's a little bit of white coming up, bubbling up, and that is the milk coming out of the ghee. And soon it'll start to have vapors, and that's when the water is coming off. So we use ghee for all 3 doshas in Ayurveda, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Vata dosha, as we know, is comprised of air and space, a little bit lighter, a little bit airier, a little bit spacey, easily distracted. And so we want to make sure that Vata stays present with her ghee. Pitta dosha is fiery and hot, and so sometimes when Pitta makes ghee, maybe we want to lower the heat a little bit so it's not so hot and it goes a little bit slower. But Pitta needs to manifest all of their patience to stay with their ghee while they're making it, because they can be a little bit impatient sometimes. Kapha dosha, which is made of air and water, can sometimes be a little heavy. Kapha has a lot of these properties that ghee has, of this heaviness to it. But so kapha dosha can sometimes do it on a hotter flame because kapha is also considered cold. And so a hotter flame can cook the ghee faster and maybe add those energetic properties to the ghee, which can make it more balancing for kapha dosha. Vata and Pitta do well using primarily ghee. It's very balancing for the system. It's considered one of the sweet foods since it's densely nutritive. Kapha also does great with ghee, but maybe just a little bit less, a little bit more in moderation, although kapha absolutely loves ghee. Take my word for it. So we can see now this metamorphosis beginning to happen here. It's kind of fascinating. You might have never noticed this before, but you start to see it's really beautiful. You start to see the milk coming up, and you start to see the water evaporating off. And we really don't do anything but watch and use all of our senses as we're making this. We don't need to stir. You don't need to lower the heat. You just pay attention to what's happening. And so as I mentioned, I'm doing this on a medium-high heat, as we see here. And it's probably going to take about 15-20 minutes to make the ghee. But you want to watch all of these different things that are happening here. If you could smell this, you would know that we were beginning to have that sort of smell of like popcorn kind of butter is what it starts to smell like. And then you know you're on the right path. So the many different ways that we use ghee are to make our vagar, which is our spice mix. When we begin most of our Ayurvedic cooking, it's really so simple. We create the vagar, which is the ghee or the oil that you might be using for that particular dish, and your spices, your turmeric, your mustard seeds, your coriander, your fennel, whatever it might be. We mix those with the ghee. If you are using mustard seeds, one of the ways that we know when the ghee is ready to add to your food is the mustard seeds will pop. So you put a little layer of ghee into your pot, you add in the mustard seeds that you're going to use. When the mustard seeds pop is when you know it's time to add the rest of your spices, and then you add your beans, grains, or greens, or whatever it is that you're mixing with your food that day. So ghee can start off as the basis of your spice mix, and it's also something that you can add to your food afterwards, especially for Vata and Pitta dosha, to help create balance in those doshas, especially in the winter or the drier, colder months. You want to take a nice dollop of ghee and put that on your oatmeal or your khichdi or your pasta. You definitely want to add a little bit more ghee in because that will help to lubricate the digestive system all the way down through the colon to help you absorb the nutrients in your food and deposit them deep into your layers of tissue and to more effectively get rid of waste. And so now we see this great transformation happening here to the ghee. It's really amazing when the butter starts to melt like this and you start to get this natural separation of the milk solids and the water evaporating off. So when I first learned to make ghee, it was with my great mentor and Ayurvedic cooking teacher, Amadea Morningstar. And she taught us a chant to do over the ghee. So I'm going to do this chant now, and you can do this over any of your food. It's a chant for white tara to help bring in benefits for all sentient beings. And we want to infuse that into our food because as we eat it, we want to thank it for nourishing us. And so here is the chant that we do over the ghee. Om tare tu mama ayujanya pune pushtim kuru soha. So everybody all together now. Om tare tu mama ayujanya pune pushtim kuru soha. Om tare tu mama ayujanya pune pushtim kuru soha. So we hope that that infuses the ghee with blessings, and so when we eat that, we receive those same blessings. You might not know it, but food really takes in the emotions that you use when you're cooking it. If you're cooking and you're upset and you're mad and you're angry, those emotions are going to be infused in your food. This is why we want to eat food that we make, or we want to eat food made by people we know. Sometimes if you eat out at a fast food restaurant or a place you're not familiar with, you have no idea the emotional connection that person has to the food. that they're making. And so it's the same with eating meat. No matter how a cow has lived their life, if they've been happy living in the field all their life and eating grass and not being shot up with hormones, but the second they go into that slaughterhouse, they know they're going to be killed. And then they start to produce all these hormones that are scared and angry and anxious and worried, and then that infuses into the body of the cow, into the muscles and the meat, and then people eat that. And I really believe that when you eat that type of food, that you are also going to take on all of those traits. And so I don't believe a plant gets angry when you're going to eat it. I think a plant looks forward to nourishing you and going back into the system when it gets eliminated. So you can just think about that a little bit. The emotions that we have when we're making our food and when we're eating our food play a really big role in how we feel personally. Okay, so about 10 minutes has gone by right now, and we see the transformation of the ghee. We start to begin to see the golden liquid underneath. The bubbles are still pretty loud, but they're kind of quieting down a little bit. So I'm just going to move this around a little bit so you can see. There's a little bit of the milk solid settling at the bottom of the pan right now. We don't want that to burn. So this is a really, really crucial time to be with your ghee. As the bubbles start to get quieter, then that means our ghee is getting close to being finished. But we still have a lot of loudness going on. I still see a lot of white coming up. Those are the milk solids. So eventually those milk solids will settle down to the bottom of the pan, and then what's left is the ghee. Now some people, there are different processes we use. Some people like to scrape off the top of the ghee. They scrape off the foam. But I learned that we just let it settle. So we're just gonna that was a big pop. So we're just gonna let it settle down all on its own without skimming anything off the top. You're going to see at the end when the ghee is finished, we're just going to be pouring it through a strainer into the cup. There are other methods you can use, like using a cheesecloth to make your ghee, or other types of fine mesh strainers, but I like to keep it really, really simple. So I just use a nice clean strainer, and you want to make sure, it's very important to make sure that everything is dry because you don't want your ghee to get wet. So as we hear now, it got really, really quiet and it started to get a little bit brown. We can see the milk solids on the bottom, and it smells really, really strong, beautiful smell. And so this is when the ghee is ready. And so when we turn it off, now this is very, very hot. So the very first time I made ghee, I was all excited. It took me a long time to gear up to it, probably a year before I felt I was, holy enough to make the ghee. And when I did, I was like, oh, it's ready. I heard it. It got quiet. It settled. There's the brown sediment at the bottom. Yay. And I took out my glass jar and I used my strainer and I poured my ghee right into my glass jar. And guess what happened? It broke. And there was ghee everywhere. And then I wiped up all the ghee with a towel, and then I put the towels into the washing machine, and then the washing machine turned into a ghee washing machine for several washes. It was a big mess. So I learned never to do that again. There are ways you can go right into a glass jar if you put a knife or a metal object in. It absorbs the heat, but it still kind of freaks me out, so I don't do it. So what I do is I pour my ghee into a Pyrex container, and I try and pour it out within a few minutes so it doesn't keep cooking, because this right now is very, very hot. And so all I'm going to do is I'm going to pour this through this container, and you can see that beautiful ghee come through there, and a little bit of the sediment comes through. And what's here left in here are the sort of caramelized milk solids that my dogs love. Actually, you can make a treat out of this by mixing it with a little jaggery, a little natural Indian sugar cane, and you mix jaggery and the sediment, and you can make a nice little candy treat. But right now we have the beautiful ghee in here, and this essence here, this golden essence, is our ghee. And so what happens is we still see here a little bit of sediment down on the bottom. And when I pour it into my ghee container, I'm going to pour it through the strainer again so it catches any sediment. So what I have in here, this is my container of finished ghee that I made a couple days ago. And this ghee here is already hard and solid. So you want to make sure, as I mentioned, never to get this wet. You do not need to refrigerate it. It can stay out on your counter. We just want to make sure that it doesn't get wet because there are no preservatives in here. And if it does get wet, it will get moldy and then your ghee is ruined. And so this is a beautiful finished ghee here. And when this is less hot, I will pour it into another ghee container, and then we have our ghee. And you don't need to wait for it to get solid to use. You can use it right now to, if you're going to be cooking right now, you can add it to a pot or a pan and mix your spices with it, and then you have your beautiful oil to use for your Ayurvedic cooking. So this was a little mini ghee demonstration just to give you an idea of truly how easy it is to make ghee. You don't need to be nervous. You don't need to worry that you're going to burn it. If you burn it, you try it again. But if you stay with your ghee and you use all your senses, then you will know when it's time to take the ghee off the heat and pour it into your container. So this will lighten up as it gets more solid. And then you have this beautiful medicinal quality ghee to use in your cooking, or perhaps to mix with medicines, or however you plan to use it. You can also use it on your skin. So many different ways to use ghee. So you can always go to my website at breatheayurveda.com and look under Ayurveda and Susan's Kitchen for recipes, and you can find so many different ways that you can use your ghee and different types of ghee that you can make. And anytime you have questions, always feel free to email me, Susan at breatheayurveda.com, and I will answer all of your questions. So everybody go make ghee and you'll be happier. Thank you.